Well, my name is Kagonyera, and I am the Chancellor of Kabale University. I think I'm serving my second term as Chancellor of that university. Kagonyera is a man who is 82 years old, was born in a place called Kabuga in Nyarushanje, the then Ruchiga County of Kigezi district, but now is part of Rukungiri district. I spent early years of my life with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, in a place called the Ikumba, Rwanda district. I stayed with her until it was time for me to start school. Around 1948, mid-48, I went to a primary school, actually a church school, at a place called Rubirizi, not far from my home. In 1949, I joined the Kantale Primary School, where I stayed until 1952, when I finished P4. In 1953, I went to Kigezi High School, where the late John Bikangaga was the headmaster, and I joined P5. I stayed there until 1956, when I finished the then junior secondary 2, that you could call primary 8 today, 8th year of education. 1957, I was a pioneer student at the then Butobere School, now known as Kigezi College Butobere, where I stayed until 1960. 61, I went to the then Royal College in Nairobi for A level, and 63, I went to the veterinary school in Nairobi, from which I graduated in 1967 with a Bachelor of Veterinary Medicine degree. Briefly, I worked in Masaka as a district veterinary officer. Very briefly, I think about 4 months. And I was transferred to Kabale. But I didn't want to work in Kabale. Why? I didn't like the implication of the local politics in my life. I preferred to work where my services were needed and were not related to politics. So I even suggested to the government that I could work even in Karamoja. The government then refused to transfer me to another place other than Kabale. And when they did, I resigned and I rejoined Nairobi as a clinical assistant in the university. Then in 1970, I went to the University of California, where I did the Master of Science degree in comparative pathology. In 1971, I joined Makerere University, where we had started a new veterinary school. And I stayed there until 1982. And after that, I went back to the University of California to do my PhD. Then I returned to Makerere in 1988, I was appointed minister in President Museveni's government as Minister of Animal Industry and Fisheries, in which ministry I stayed until 91, something like that. Then after that, I was a private member of parliament. Well, in the meantime, we had elections in 1989, I think, where I was elected a member of parliament for Rubabo County. So when I was dropped as Minister of Animal Industry, the ministry was merged with the agriculture. I remained a private backbencher. I can't remember how many years later, I was reappointed minister for general duties in the office of the Prime Minister, where I served for about 6 years and then dropped. Sometime after that, I was appointed Deputy Managing Director of the National Social Security Fund. While I was there, of course, I contested in quotes for Chancellorship of Kabale University to replace Professor Nsibambi, who was Prime Minister and was the Chancellor, and he was the first known head of state Chancellor of Kabale University. So I was the second known head of state Chancellor of Kabale University. But what was important in my case was that I didn't have any executive powers. You see, when you are Prime Minister, you can direct the Vice Chancellor of Kabale to come to your office. But at that time, I was an ordinary citizen, so there wasn't a lot of power. But I had, I think, 8 wonderful years as Chancellor of Kabale University. Sometime earlier, I had been Chairman Appointments Board at Kabale for 5 years. I appointed about 3 or 4 Vice Chancellors. Yes. And many other leaders, promoted many, appointed many. And in those 5 years, not once did we have our decision contested anywhere. So 5 peaceful years at Kabale. If you deserved an appointment or a promotion, you got, irrespective of where you came from, and what political affiliation you had. So we had 5 peaceful years that I can proudly talk about as the Chairman Appointments Board. And I had very powerful members, which included the late Joseph Byamugisha, prominent lawyer in the town, Professor Rutaro Bossa, Dr. Francis Omaswa, the late Mrs. Nekion, Professor Dr. Kagoda, former PS Internal Affairs, yes, Dr. Kagoda, and that was it. So, and we made a very important appointment. We even dismissed some people, and they threatened to take us. We said, you go to court, we'll fight you there. So this is what I have been. As you know, I'm now Chancellor of your university, Kabale University. I think your first Chancellor as a public university, and I'm very happy to be serving in that capacity. You know very well that Africa, as a continent, we are the richest continent in the world with regard to natural resources. Talk about fertile soils. I'm told about 60% of the arable land in the world, or even more, is in Africa. Generally, many parts of Africa have got sufficient rainfall. And we have plenty of sun so that you can grow crops many crops in a year. Therefore, it is a shame, big one, that many parts of Africa suffer from endemic food shortage and even hunger, where people starve to death. Now, the major cause of all that, if you add things like very high infant mortality, very high maternal mortality, very low life expectancy, all those, the major cause, which many politicians miss. Because here in Uganda, politicians used to have a slogan, and that is to fight poverty, disease, and ignorance. Now, what they ought to know is that if you fought ignorance, you didn't have to fight poverty. Both poverty and disease are mutually exclusive with knowledge. Once you have knowledge, you threaten poverty, definitely. Take countries like South Korea, Japan, Singapore. Singapore had the same per capita income as Ghana in 1957 when Ghana became independent. Today, the per capita income of Ghana is around $2,000. And guess what that of South Korea is? $40,000. Every child born in Korea today is worth $40,000. And every child born in Ghana is worth only $2,000. And simple, Ghana has gold, has water resources, has soils, has what? But the difference is knowledge. Now, where you have a university or education institutions, their major job is to fight ignorance, to impart knowledge. Therefore, I think that the establishment of many universities in this country is a positive thing. But it is important that they be universities, true universities, not celebrated secondary schools or even primary schools. And we have had problems of institutions being established as universities, and yet they don't have the prerequisites for universities. What is it that you need to be a good university or a university worth its name? I think the most important thing is the type of teachers you have. Are they qualified? Have they been to good universities so that they can compete in knowledge with the other people? You see, it is not enough to go to Makerere here in Kampala and get a PhD, say, in chemistry. And you have not known, you don't know what other people in your field are doing, say, for example, at Cambridge University or at Stanford. You know? So it is important that the knowledge we have as teachers is comparable to knowledge that the rest of the world have. Therefore, number one is we want qualified teachers. Number two, we need properly prepared students who will be able to make use of the knowledge the lecturers will give them. Number three, you need facilities. Classrooms, laboratories, where these students who are doing sciences can go and study. And number 4, I think it is important that you have good conditions in which the students live. For example, if you have a young man or young woman studying to be a doctor, and he or she is living in a ghetto, where there is no running water, where there is no electricity, what sort of doctor are you going to produce? Anybody who is going to be a proud doctor should be able to live in a reasonably good environment. I am extremely happy that the government of Uganda under President Museveni has seen it fit to improve the conditions that really the government, especially President Museveni himself, one of the announcements he made it in my presence when I was Chancellor of Makerere. When you get a university teacher who cannot even send his or her child to the kind of secondary school he went to, what sort of lecturer do you have? So we are improving the conditions of service of our university teachers is absolutely important. And for that reason, I thank the government for finding it fit to do that. I saw the other day Professor Katunguka Tachambogo complaining about lack of teachers because he cannot compete with the market for these science teachers. Therefore, let us not have our cake and eat it. If we must prioritize education and a higher education after that, we must create the right conditions in which we can attract the best teachers. And really good teachers, lecturers of both hard and soft skills are conditions sine qua non for us to have a good university. Yes. So I'm happy that we have many universities in this country, but effort must put into making them worthy universities, not just the name. I have heard that if it is true that you get a law class in the law schools as big as 200 in a class. Now, if you have very large professional classes, it is very difficult. And you know, with the professional schools, it is important for a person-to-person relationship between the teachers and the students. And these large numbers of students are part of the cause for inefficiency, ineffective teaching. For example, if you have a lecturer who has 200 scripts to mark, isn't it a Herculean task?
Have more. Some classes go to around 400.
400, yeah, I know. I think in schools like political science or economics, probably they have 500. So it's just unthinkable. Therefore, we need to work very hard to make sure that the student-staff ratio is a manageable number. If it is not, we shall compromise the quality of education. And let me tell you, as soon as the quality of education at the top is compromised, it goes down to all levels. You see, we used to have a problem with the World Bank and the like, who were suggesting that we should concentrate on primary education. Now, who teaches in those primary schools? It ought to be someone who has been to university. But equally important, university education is like the shoot of a plant. Any plant, if the shoot is damaged, that's the end of that plant. Absolutely, thank you. It cannot blossom. So if any country is going to grow in education, quality of education at a university level should be high level education. Because it is these people who have got the pride to challenge lower level cadres. That's why you find people like me who went to very good universities. We are very proud and we insist on knowledge. But if someone has had mediocre education, he will also settle for less quality of education. And as I've told you, if university education is poor, it percolates to lower levels. Up there you must have the smartest guys. And you can only be smart if you are properly educated. Now, let me tell you, by giving you an example. I had a chance to work with the late Professor Apollon Sibambi. At one time we were both teachers at Makerere University, and we used to sit in the Senate together. Senate is the highest academic organ of the university. Then I became a minister, and he eventually came and joined the government as a minister. Eventually he becomes prime minister, and I had the privilege to serve under him as a minister for general duties. So I knew the late Professor Nsibambi for a long time. He was a human being. Therefore, he could make mistakes. He was a human being. Therefore, there was a limit to his knowledge. But for the time I was very close to him, especially as a minister for general duties in his office, Professor Nsibambi was a man of quality. That's why I think he was prime minister for 12 years. You do not hear anything wrong that Nsibambi did, knowing that it was wrong, especially doing it for his own advantage. In other words, not a single instance of corrupt behavior on Professor Nsibambi's part. So, we used to talk, and I could tell that Professor Nsibambi's character was strongly influenced by his parental background. His father was a very important leader in the Culture Revolution.
Yes,
in the church.
Simeon Sibambi.
Yes. In other words, in their family, there are things which were right, there were things which were wrong. And that man continued them even in public life. He had his own weaknesses as a human being. But for Nsibambi to do something deliberately wrong, because he saw an advantage in it, never. And I think he went to King's College Budro. I think that influenced him. He went to Makerere University. He was influenced there. I think he went to the University of Chicago. He was influenced there. But I think his family background was extremely important. Therefore, I could apply the same to many other people. I can tell you even personally, although my father died when I was only 15, I have an idea about how he used to do his public work. And many times when I'm doing my things around me, public and private, I ask myself, what would my father think if I did this? That's why you are quite right to say that a very important component of a person's education is at home. Many of the values children have, they pick them from home. I can tell you, my children, I am not being unnecessarily arrogant, but while my children went to school and went to university, there are certain things they would never do because they knew the consequences from my side could be dire. It is important that young children are molded to do what is right and to shun what is wrong, to support what is good and shun what is bad. Now, I think, I'm not an educationist, I didn't study education as such, I'm just a vet, and I taught in the university. You know, university teachers don't have to study methods of education. But I think it is quite wrong for small kids to be put in boarding schools. Forget about the fires that killed some of them. Even without that, a young child needs the attention of the mother. Yes. Fathers like you may not give enough time, but the mother is very important. Has the child eaten? Has the child bathed? Has the child spoiled something? The mother is very, very important. So is the father to some extent. Therefore, I think you're quite right. I know you are right. A lot of education should be in our homes. That's why some of these guys, you know, they tell you, excuse me, that you can take a guy out of the bush, but you may not take the bush out of that guy. And that bush we are talking about is the bush that is influenced by the parents. Very, very highly critical that the parents must participate in molding their children to do what is wrong, right, sorry, and shun what is wrong. Very important indeed. Yes. I look at Kabale University with a lot of excitement. First of all, the geographical position of that institution in the extreme southwest of the country, where we have Rwanda to the south, Congo to the west, and even Tanzania near there, Burundi. Yes, that is a very fertile hinterland for that university to influence education in East Africa. Number two, that region, Kigezi region, used to influence a lot education in this country. Our kids went to schools like Subi, Budo, Muiri, Nyakasura, what have you. And they have contributed to the growth of this country quite a lot. And yet, with the time, education becomes more and more expensive. So if you have an institution like Kabale University where our kids can come, maybe stay in moderately cheap hostels, be able to get education well and good. The area in which that university is so overpopulated that things cannot remain as they were. The only salvation we have is through knowledge creation. And therefore, Kabale University, like any other institution in that region, has a very, very important role to play in the survival of that region. The environment is terrible. You look at the land, so completely, yes, the crops no longer grow. Sooner than later, if nothing important is done about agriculture in that region, people will start dying of starvation. So I want Kabale University to be relevant to the present needs of the people, whether it be in agriculture, in health, in technology of health. In that region, I am looking at it as being like the Boston, Massachusetts area in the United States, where a major part of their industry is the education industry. And the Kabale University should take a leading role.
Thank you so much. That really...
In fact, let me add, there was a time in Amin's days when people in Kampala used to take their children to Kabale Preparatory School. The only one in the country which was surviving the mismanagement of Uganda by Amin. I want the same to happen at the university level when many Ugandans and other people flock to that area to get education. I have a dream, like Martin Luther King had, when the Kabale region, the Kigezi region, can be like the Massachusetts, Boston area, where education, knowledge creation is the most important industry. Maybe comparable to the area around Cambridge, you know, the area around Oxford, that kind of thing. That's what I want to see in that place. And it can happen.
Yes.
The environment, natural and otherwise, allows for it. You can even say, you know, the certain social-political issues surrounding Kampala, they are not in that part of the... So people there can concentrate on education. And that's what I would like to see Kabale taking a leading role. For Kabale University is to appeal to the powers that be, to listen to our requests. For example, we have a serious need for the land around the university. I want to appeal to both the local government and the central government, including the president himself, that it is absolutely necessary they will get that land. Kabale University is sometimes looked at by people in short term. But some of us are looking at the university over the next 50 plus years. Therefore, that land is absolutely necessary for that university to grow. If you compare it to other public universities, it is embarrassing as to the very little land on which it is situated. And yet, people don't know, even the local leaders don't know that the university can contribute very important, make very important contribution to the economic growth in that area. So please, government, both local and central government, my appeal, help us get that land. 2, I know the government kit is always not enough, but please put money into higher education. Because higher education competes with the other areas, and we need the best. If we can't pay them well, we can't have them. Therefore, help us to be able to execute our mandate by supporting us in terms of resources. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Kabale University is a very young public university, which means it belongs to the people of Uganda through the government of Uganda. But in the short time we have existed, we have made some landmark achievements, for example, in medical education, in engineering, and some of our graduates have been able to make achievements in international competitions. Therefore, we don't compromise on quality and standards. And my appeal to parents and the young men and the women is that embrace Kabale University. If you get your education at Kabale University, it will be one of the best in the country. Thank you very much indeed. God bless you.